Welcome back to the Kevin O'Connor Show. Here joining me to discuss the Oklahoma City going up 3-1 over the Minnesota Timberwolves and everything else happening around the NBA playoffs and the NBA offseason is Andrew Sharp from the GOAT Pod. Andrew, how you doing?
I'm doing well. It's great to see you. I don't feel great about having to share a platform with a full-fledged Thunder propagandist after that win, but here we are, KOC waving the pom-poms for picks and free throws every episode, and I guess this is just the world we're going to have to live in, at least for the remainder of this playoffs and maybe for the next several years. Who knows?
Picks, free throws, and vintage superstar performances because SGA, 40 points on 13 of 30, tons of mid-range, absolutely dominant from him. Jalen Williams as well, 34 points on 13 of 24. Those two carried Oklahoma City to that victory. Chet also had 21 in the game. They looked like a true big three, and I felt OKC, we'll talk about them more in a minute, Andrew. They answered every time, but if you juxtapose what those stars did against Minnesota, with this being such a close game, 128-126,
yeah,
the three leading scorers for Minnesota, Gilgeous-Alexander Walker with 23, Jaden McDaniels with 22, Dante DiVincenzo with 21, and then you have Julius Randle, who's a total zero in the game, 5 points on 1 of 7, miserable performance, Magic's run out with him, and then Anthony Edwards, 16 points on only 5 makes, only 13 attempts. 6 attempts, 6 assists to 5 turnovers, tons of lapses on defense, underwhelming performance by him. It feels to me like when he's not scoring, when he's facing double teams and triple teams sometimes, it feels like he checks out. Is that fair to say?
He definitely checked out in the first half. I mean, and it's so frustrating because before the game last night, I was thinking to myself, this might be the last big game we get during the 2025 playoffs. And ultimately, since the Thunder won, I think that will probably be true. But by the same token, like the game itself delivered, and it was right there for Minnesota to steal in the second half. And the supporting cast showed up. Guys like Gilgeous-Alexander Walker, Dante DiVincenzo, like they were doing everything you would dream they would do as a Wolves fan. And then Ant in the first half, like I think the Ant conversation's a little bit complicated. I mean, the first half he was just way too passive and not forcing the issue nearly enough. And then in the second half, he was a lot more proactive about, forcing his way into the lane, making quick decisions. And the Wolves were generating good offense when he was doing that. So, that's how he needs to play. Even in the second half, there were still a lot of sloppy possessions from Ant, and he didn't look like he had a good offensive rhythm, and his jumpers weren't falling, but he was still a net positive in that second half. And so my thing with Ant in that game is, as a superstar, as a top 5 guy, it's one thing to struggle the way he struggled in the second half because that happens. It is what it is. And the Wolves were still in position to win the game. The way he played in the first half just can't really happen. And then on Randall's side, I mean, I saw a stat like Ant and Randall combined for 6 made field goals and 10 turnovers. And I think Randall only had 1 made field goal.
Only 1. Yep.
This might just not be a good Randall series. It's funny because if the Knicks and Wolves could undo the Cat trade for just this series, I think the Knicks would be better off with Randall, and I think the Wolves would be better off with Cat to just stand and hit shots and space the floor a little bit, because Randall, so much of his game is putting it on the floor and dribbling the air out of the ball for 6 or 7 seconds, and you just can't do that against this OKC defense. So he's in hell regardless. I was hoping for more than we got from Ant in Game 4. That's all I can say.
Yeah, I was hoping for a lot more from him too, especially after what he had was a really good Game 3. And of course, that was a weird game. Like, it was a blowout for Minnesota over OKC. OKC felt like they came out very flat in the game. But Ant, I think you're right, Andrew. Obviously a lot better in the second half compared to the first half.
Mm-hmm.
But there's still times where I'm like, yes, even though you're facing doubles, even though you're facing this pressure on your drives to the basket, I still feel like there's more from him that he can give. Like SGA shot 30 times.
Yeah.
Jalen Williams shot 24 times. And Ant, like, you only get 13 shots in the game.
Two
Only
field
13?
goal attempts in the first half. That is insane. Like, it's totally unacceptable. And I mean, it in terms of Ant and how this projects forward, the other thing that I will mention is I worry about the transformation of his shot diet that we've seen this year, because during the regular season, he basically played like a new age James Harden, and it worked to great effect. He's taken threes and he's at the rim, and that's about it. And Ant has become one of the best players in the league, a perennial MVP candidate at this point. But what we saw from Shea is he was eating in the mid-range throughout that game, and sometimes that's what's required in the playoffs, and it felt like Ant wasn't able to make that adjustment necessarily. Like the growth we've seen from Ant as a three-point shooter is unbelievable. One of the biggest stories in the entire league over the last couple of years. But I worry that now he is over-indexing on playing that way and doesn't have some of the half-court hacks that Shea has had anytime the Thunder need it in this series. It's unbelievable.
100% spot on. I mean, I think with Ant, like SGA, all the follow merchant talk and everything like that, part of it is, yes, grifting. Part of it is where he lives on the floor.
Yeah.
He lives in the mid-range. He lives in the paint. And he's just so super shifty and slippery on his drives to the basket. He's able to draw a lot of contact. Ant doesn't really have that as part of his game. He lives on the perimeter. For such an elite athlete, he doesn't even get to the basket nearly as much as you would expect it for someone who's just scrolling TikTok or Instagram Reels and seeing highlights. He doesn't get to the basket like that. And so with Ant, to me, that's like, we saw him grow. This year, I think you're right. The growth as a three-point shooter is one of the biggest stories in the league, and it's one of the biggest reasons for optimism for him growing moving forward in his career in the NBA, because it's so easy to forget he's only 23 years old. But I think with him, you call him like a new age James Harden like style with the shooting during the regular season and all that. He also is sometimes with just the way he stands around.
That's what would freak me out. Yeah, I mean, that happened a little bit in last year's Western Conference Finals, where he just goes into like autopilot mode and checks out. It happened a little bit during the Paris Olympics once they got to the knockout round, where a lot of people were counting on him to really step up, and he didn't have his greatest games once the U.S. was actually facing real competition. And it's happened a couple times in the playoffs where I'll be watching the Wolves, and I'm like, what is the deal here? Is this like a feel out game? Like, are you going to start attacking? Because even when Ant is dealing with a defense like OKC, OKC is like the perfect team. They're perfectly designed to screw him up and make it really, really difficult. They're packing the paint. They got all these rangy wings.
Lou Dort. Oh
yeah. Lou Dort, he like from the opening whistle last night, those guys were in everyone's jersey and just like, they were basically, it was ball pressure like 45 feet from the hoop anytime the Wolves had the ball, and it was super impressive. But even in that context, good things happen when Ant forces his way into the lane and forces the defense to collapse. Like, the Wolves were getting good offense out of that. And so that's what needs to be a point of emphasis going forward. And I worry that whoever was coaching him to play like James Harden and adapt his game that way, I hope that whoever that is can watch these playoffs and be like, all right, it is actually okay to mix in some pull-up 14-footers here and there. And once you get to the highest levels of the sport, that's going to be important too. Because going back to Harden had those shots completely programmed out of him, and that really hurt him come playoff time. And so Ant, 23 years old, plenty of time, but that's definitely an area I would look at going forward.
And plus, like, just to stick with the Harden comp, Harden did drive to the basket a ton. He drew a ton of fouls. He had an amazing floater. He was a great at-rim finisher, and he was a willing passer. And I feel like with Ant, I know he created some good shots in the game, but he only ended up having 10 potential assists. It's not like he was slinging it around all game. I think Ant, this series is over. Like, Minnesota's not going to have a 3-1 comeback against OKC. Ant this offseason needs to take two things. A, I need to learn to enjoy playmaking. He needs to get better as a passer. He needs to not get disengaged when he's not scoring. He needs to find satisfaction in passing. But almost more importantly, I think, he's got to embrace playing off ball. 1 of 5 on dribble jumper threes in game 4. I mentioned this after, I think, game 2 in my last pod. He doesn't take enough catch and shoot threes. 1 of 5 on dribble jumper threes in game 4. 0 for 1 on a heave. Only 1 catch and shoot 3-point attempt for a guy who's made 52.9% of his catch and shoot threes in the playoffs. So this guy who is an elite shooter, who has become an elite shooter, doesn't get enough easy shots off the catch because he's not moving and relocating off ball. He's not getting himself into position for those shots. He's just standing around near the logo as a reset outlet for the offense instead of being actively involved in the offense after he gives up the ball. And also, it's not just shooting. The last time he scored on a cut to the rim was game 3 against the Warriors.
Oof.
Like, come on. You're an all-world athlete. You can finish lobs. You're so explosive on your first step with or without the ball in your hands. Cut to the rim, man. Like, play off of some of these Randall back to the basket opportunities. I know, like, Minnesota might need to make some changes, but movement off ball. He's too good to not be doing that. And I think those are the two things he's really going to take from this year's playoffs. Like last year, he improved as a shooter.
When you said Randall back to the basket opportunities, I physically shuddered here on the other side of the conversation. I want no more Randall back to the basket opportunities. Having said that,
the idea of Randall passing the ball to you on a cut.
Yeah, well, and Ant moving off the ball is a really important shift. And I think the second half of this Wolves season, because the first half of the season, the chemistry was still a little bit wonky. Ant was dealing with double teams and triple teams and getting really frustrated. And I think one of the ways he cracked those defenses is he was more willing to move off ball. And I think that requires a lot of energy. And he didn't look like he had that energy in game 4, which is obviously disappointing. It's the biggest game of the Wolves season. But that's definitely another area where he's just got to figure it out. And in terms of his playmaking, the one thing that I wonder about is we've sort of settled into this paradigm in the NBA where every good player just has the ball in his hands all the time and plays that heliocentric style. And I think Ant is going to be better off being a wing and instead of being like the do everything Luka type or do everything Shea type. And I wonder whether Minnesota will be able to get a capable enough point guard in there, because Minnesota, I think they might be winning this series when Conley's on the floor and there's a little bit more balance. But there's no one outside of Conley, and Conley's like 40 years old at this point. And so that's another concern for the future is like, can Rob Dillingham be that guy? I don't know. Rob Dillingham's kind of a fun scorer here and there, but finding someone who can get into the lane and collapse a defense to make it a little bit easier for Anthony Edwards would be a priority for me if I'm Tim Connolly.
100% agree with you. I mean, ultimately, that's, I think, why Conley made the bet on Dillingham last year. He's smaller, of course, but they need a creator next to Ant.
Yeah.
They need a guy who can help run the show because Mike Conley's too old. It's too much to expect from him. Like, he can't tap into his prime self at this stage of his career. So I think finding a point guard is going to be very important for them. Naz Reid has been disappointing as well. He's underwhelmed. Julius Randle, just a horrible game. OKC was 7 of 10 when Randle was the closest defender. Didn't make up for it on defense either.
That matches the eye test. Yeah, a lot of rough defensive possessions for Julius Randle out there. I was wondering whether he was going to be playable down the stretch, but Finch continued to roll with him.
Awful. And then once Gobert is declined or gone. Like they have no sense of interior defense with Randall and Osreed. So finding another big, finding a guard, like it could get shaky really quick from Minnesota if they don't nail these next steps. Whereas OKC, man, they're one win away from the NBA Finals. SGA, Jalen Williams, Chet Holmgren, they looked like a true big three in that game 4. SGA, 40 points, 10 assists, 9 rebounds. Jalen Williams, 34 points, hit a ton of big shots, dominated on defense, showed versatility defending Randall sometimes on other guys as a help defender, and Chet, 21 points, 7 boards, 3 blocks. OKC, Andrew, just growing up before our eyes.
Pom-poms.
I don't think they win this game without that Denver series, though. The way they've grown, they are a better team today than they were when they won 68 during the regular season. They are better today because of that Denver series and because of the way that they've grown this entire postseason.
No question about it, man. I was so impressed with the way they handled themselves, and coming into this playoff run, I knew there was a chance that OKC could win the title because their defense is so good that might be enough. It gives them a bigger margin for error than most any other team in the NBA. What I didn't trust about OKC and why I ultimately thought they would lose in the Western Conference playoffs is the mix around Shea. Shea, even going back to last year, Shea was like really solid and gave you just about everything you would want in that Mavs series. But Jalen Williams, like he had some pretty iffy big game moments along the way this year. I don't know whether you count the NBA Cup this year, but like a couple really tough performances in that.
He was bad in it, dude. He was bad in the NBA Cup. Like the NBA Cup is what prompted me. I wrote an article for Yahoo at the time, like, Jalen Williams is the biggest question about OKC's chances of winning the title because of what he did in last year's playoffs in big games, what he did in the NBA Cup in big games. And he's had some stinkers in the early rounds, but he's been awesome for OKC.
Well, and
he's learned a lot, it seems.
Yeah, you mentioned the Nuggets series. Like the Jalen Williams I was worried about showed up on several occasions during that Denver series. And it was like, okay, they're now asking Shea to just be the alpha and omega and do everything for that offense. And I think you hit a point of diminishing returns if you're just playing through one guy on every single possession. And then it's like, all right, maybe Alex Caruso can bail them out here or there. And that version of the team seems to have, it seems like it doesn't exist anymore because the Thunder that we've seen this week, I mean, for all the talk of OKC's defense, game 4 was about OKC's offense and just like really, really high level execution from them. I mean, Shea on his own hit about 7 shots in that second half, where Minnesota was making a run. They're hitting shots. The crowd's going insane. And Shea just calmly goes down on the other end and gets exactly what he wants, gets a bucket, extends the OKC lead back to 4 or 5. And J-Dub and Chet had similar possessions, to be clear. Like, those guys were incredible as well. And so if OKC is going to do that on offense, then they're completely unbeatable. And they're a deserving NBA title winner here. And it looks like that's where we're headed.
I mean, look, Minnesota scored 41 in the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
And OKC still manages to hang on. Because OKC had 38. They managed to score. And I think you're right. Like, their defense is what gave me confidence in them as a potential title winner. But ultimately, the offense was the question, and they continue to answer questions. They're playing different ways in different games. Like, Denver used zone against them a lot, and they became more of a 3-point heavy-leaning team. We saw them take a season low frequency of 3-point attempts in game 1 against Minnesota. They've played different styles depending on what the game demanded, and they've still won. And I think it speaks to their versatility and how they can just shapeshift depending on what the game needs from them. And that's why I think they're going to be in this position and why they're going to win the title.
It is infuriating as a Thunder hater to watch them grow up like this and really find a rhythm offensively. Because, like, even going back to the Denver series, there was that game, it was either game 4 or game 5, where the Nuggets had him, and then Lou Dort pulls a couple threes out of his ass, and they're able to sort of change the momentum and get the win at the end because the defense locks down and Denver just can't get anything in the final 4 or 5 minutes. That formula is what I envisioned if OKC was going to win. Like, one of their role players gets hot and the defense gives them enough to get them a title. The formula that we're seeing against the Wolves is much scarier, where suddenly J-Dub looks like the Westbrook to Shea's Durant, and then Chet's hitting shots. He's making plays on defense. If this is what it's going to be, coupled with the depth that they have and the defense that they play, I mean, we keep talking about the parity era. It's a parity era with an asterisk, it looks like, for the next couple of years here. So I guess people like you are going to be happy, and even I am coming to admire what the Thunder are putting together here.
You called Jalen Williams the Westbrook to SGA's KD. Thunder are about to make the NBA Finals. If the Thunder win the NBA Finals, does Shai Gilgeous-Alexander become the greatest Thunder player ever?
That's tough. Greatest in the minds of Thunder fans or NBA fans?
In the minds of Andrew Sharp.
Okay. I don't think prime SGA is better than prime KD from 10 to 12 years ago. So I'm still going to give the edge to KD, but Shai is making it more and more of a conversation. And if I'm a Thunder fan in Oklahoma City, yeah, Shai rockets to number 1 the second he gets a title.
Why does he not rocket to number 1 with a title in the mind of Andrew Sharp? Wins an MVP, multi-time All-NBA, multi-time All-Star. Is it just the longevity of KD in Oklahoma City that gives him the edge for you?
Well, and it's hard to say, because are we talking about who's the best player you ever saw wear a Thunder jersey? For me, I'm a geriatric millennial right alongside KD, and so I get sentimental when I think of the KD.
A DC guy, too.
Exactly. So perhaps I'm biased. I don't know. I still give the edge to KD because his game was a little bit more thrilling, and I think by the numbers, like, he can match Shai in basically every category. That being said, Shai, the success that he's had the past 2 years is really, really hard to argue with. And, like, in the playoffs, he's giving you everything you would want from a superstar. So he's going to make it a conversation over the next couple of years.
One other thing I want to talk about from this game is the end of it, because it was an amazing game, start to almost finish, until OKC starts following up 3 and it becomes a free throw shooting contest to finish the game. Do you think the NBA should do something to remove following up 3 in these endgame situations, or should they leave it as a smart, tactical decision by teams? What do you think the league should be thinking about this?
Oh, I forgot. This is another thing that you probably love. You're cheering for Dagnall.
Nope. I look. I thought it was
smart coaching.
I thought it was a poor decision in the Denver series.
Yeah,
Jokic was off the floor.
Jokic was off the floor. They fouled instantly, basically extending the game. Yep.
You're putting the pressure on your own guys. This time, I still feel like there's risk in doing it, but obviously it worked out. But there's no denying, regardless of the strategic aspect of it, there's no denying I don't want to watch free throws. I don't want to watch stoppages over and over in the final 5 to 20 seconds of the game. It's ugly to watch, but is there anything you think the NBA should do about it, or just this is something that sometimes is going to happen? It's not an issue every game.
So how do you solve it in that spot? Basically, you allow the team that's fouled the option to take it as a side out of bounds?
You could do that. You could make it worth 3 free throws instead of 2. because of intent, to shoot a three, down 3 or down 4 in the last 15 seconds or something like that.
Wow. The basketball karma rule. I
something
really love
along
that
those
idea.
lines, like instead of, like how sometimes they say, oh, he's not in the act of shooting. Say make it so obviously he's in the act of shooting. That's the intent of him receiving the ball. It is in the act of shooting. Obviously, that creates issues for, sometimes a team may say we did not intend to foul. We didn't mean to foul. That there's always errors there, potential room for, a lot of controversy, but there's also room for controversy no matter what the rules are. So maybe something like that, like make it 3 free throws.
I don't want to do that. As much as I love the idea of Coach Dagnall trying to foul up 3 and then realizing, oh no, there's a basketball karma corollary. The other team gets 4 free throws now. You're screwed. You lose. That's very appealing to me. However, I don't want to risk more replay reviews as refs go to the monitor and try to divine intent. I think that's a worst case scenario for the league and the end of these games. What I would say is it's a very simple fix. Just allow a team like the Wolves, if there's 6 seconds left, all right, you have the option of taking it out of bounds, and then the Thunder can run the risk of fouling with 4 seconds left and turning it into an inbounds play at that point. Like, I think that basically solves the problem right there. And it's the sort of simple fix that could take the NBA 5 years to arrive at, but I would wholeheartedly support it because I don't think any basketball fan wants to watch things descend into a parade of free throws, which happened a couple times during the regular season. It extends the game during the regular season in a really obnoxious way. And then it removes the drama from some of the best playoff games we have. What do you think?
Look, I think, they should do something about it. I like your idea a lot. Ultimately, people like there's people arguing on social media that say, oh, it's about competition. Basketball's competition, not an entertainment product. Yes, it is an entertainment product.
Yeah.
You want your end game situations to be as entertaining as possible. And nothing's better than those back and forths rather than a free throw shooting contest.
And my idea is consistent with the notion of basketball as competition. You shouldn't be penalized as the team on offense for getting fouled. And if you're trying to get a 3 up to tie a game and suddenly you have to go to the free throw line and shoot 2 free throws, you're being penalized because the other team decided to foul you. And so I think it's a pretty easy fix. We'll see whether they do it. I forgot to ask you, do you think Shea is the best Thunder player ever if they win a title this year?
Yeah, I do.
Wow.
I do. I think
he's going to have a good case.
The ring puts him over the top, and the fact he also has an MVP. He has had 2 amazing playoff runs. I mean, yeah, I think he becomes the greatest Thunder player ever. With a ring. Without the ring, no, it's still Kevin Durant. It is still KD. But with a ring, yes, it becomes Shai Gilgeous-Alexander.
Yeah. Do you think KD's overrated historically?
No, I think he has, some flaws. I still wish he were better as a playmaker. Obviously, the lack of leadership. But I think KD is still one of the most magnificent scorers we will ever see.
Yeah,
the most dominant in the prime of his career. It's so easy to forget. KD now is like so 3-point mid-range heavy, but prime KD could get to the rim anytime, any moment. Dominant coming off of some of those pin down screens because the pull-up threat or the drive threat. Like prime KD, there was like literally nothing he couldn't do on the court.
Yeah.
He could do everything as a scorer. And he was obviously at his peak with the Warriors. Played the 5 for them sometimes. He was
great
unbelievable defensively.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so his versatility defensively, the fact he could do everything from every spot on the floor offensively. The passing isn't there. The leadership isn't there the way you would hope. Obviously made some poor decisions with the teams he chose.
Mm-hmm.
But I think he's still top 15, top 20 ever. I don't think that's overblown at all.
Yeah, that's fair. It's just in terms of comparing Shea and KD, I what I worry about is that my bias is toward how much I love watching Kevin Durant play, and that overlooks some flaws in terms of the disappointments that happened on KD's watch in Oklahoma City. Like in the finals against LeBron, he got kind of punked. They lost the 3-1 lead against the Warriors a couple years later. And Shea, it's getting harder and harder to argue with the production. And so I as much as I want to choose KD, I think Shea might be the right answer for best Thunder player ever. But
yeah, I think some of the playoff shortcomings late in the series. I mean, blowing a 3-1 lead, that's tough, man.
Well, and it's more like, I would say KD is one of the greatest players ever. But if he has to be your best player and your franchise leader, I think the story is a little bit more complicated than this generation of basketball analysts has acknowledged. Whereas Shea can definitely be that guy, and I think wears that crown pretty naturally. So anyways, just an interesting aside. I was curious where you would land on that one.
If we're comparing Shea and KD historically in 8-10 years with where they rank all the time, that'll be a totally different thing. But Shea very well might end up the best Thunder player ever, but KD might end up the better player ever.
Yeah.
So we'll see, obviously, how Shea's career unfolds and how the rest of this series and the finals unfolds. Out east, the Pacers and the Knicks. Pacers go up 2-0 in the series, have an amazing Game 1 comeback. They win Game 2 in New York. Knicks come back, have a comeback of their own in Game 3 to beat the Pacers in Indiana. Karl Anthony Towns, game of his life. 20 points in the fourth quarter, scoring from everywhere. Is that a one-off, Andrew, or is that a sign of more to come? Is there something the Knicks or Cat found in that second half that could be translatable to Game 4 tonight?
Well, feeling like a one-off from Cat there. Pretty phenomenal fourth quarter from him, and I was happy for him in part because I was really, I felt bad watching him earlier in the series. The Pacers are attacking him pretty relentlessly, and you look up at the Knicks starting five and some of the struggles they've had together the last couple years. Cat, I believe, has a negative net rating in the playoffs. And I think there are real shortcomings that Cat brings to the table if you're trying to win a championship. By the same token, I think he plays hard, and I like him. Like, he's kind of a goofball and gets made fun of on social media constantly, but I think he's a good dude. So I kind of wince when I consider, on one hand, the realities of Cat and the vulnerabilities that aren't really going away as we hit like a decade of Cat in the NBA. And by the same token, I don't want him to be a punchline. And so I was happy that he had that moment. Do I think the Knicks are going to win the series? Don't think the Knicks have enough. But I don't know. Maybe I'll be wrong.
One of the interesting things from that Game 3, Brunson plays only 2 minutes and 46 seconds in the fourth quarter because of foul trouble. And that, I felt, really, really helped out the Knicks defense.
Yep.
They still got buckets. Cat went crazy. 20 points of the 36 the Knicks had in that fourth quarter, but they have Cat and Brunson on the floor at the same time. Their defense is just so much worse. 2 attack points. But when it's just one of those guys, it just feels like they're able to defend at such a higher level. And so, in a way, it worked against the Pacers.
Totally.
Brunson had 5 fouls. It's weird to say, but that happened earlier in the series as well. Game 1, the Knicks built their fourth quarter lead with Brunson off the floor.
100%, man. And that's the takeaway from the first couple games of this series for me was, man, the Knicks era may have peaked beating the Celtics in round 2, because I'm looking at these starters and it never looks easy for them. And it does pretty consistently look easy to score on them. And how are you ever going to win in a conference final situation or a final situation if those are the dynamics? And it really is true with Cat and Brunson on the floor together. And this was a concern that people had the second they traded for Karl Towns in the fall. And so all of that, it's not like this is breaking news, but it was definitely true in game 4 that, like, removing Brunson, that was when they got the run started at the end of the third quarter. They also hit some shots at the end of the second quarter to keep things a little bit more under control going into halftime. So it was a really impressive game from the Knicks, and Cat finishing in the fourth was awesome. But at the same time, it's hard to win when you have that many defensive weaknesses to exploit. And the Pacers are just really smart at targeting guys on New York's side. What I worry about with Indiana, and I'm wondering how you feel about how they closed that game, the final 6 minutes, like, it was still there for them to win. And in the half court, they just couldn't get any offense going. And so I wonder if New York can clean up the turnovers a little bit more in game 4, will that be enough to just force Indiana to beat you in the half court? And do the Pacers have guys that can do that? I was like very, very high on Halliburton after the first couple games. And then at the end of game 3, I was like, kind of wish he had a little bit more to offer as a scorer in these moments.
I mean, Bridges was awesome against Halliburton in game 3, first of all. But with Halliburton, at the end of game 1, in my notes, before the Pacers comeback had occurred, in my notes I wrote, Halliburton too passive, only 18 shots. These are the games he needs to have 20 plus. And that's something I've hammered basically his whole career. He's an unbelievable passer. That's obvious. But sometimes I like, it's like you can get anywhere on the floor. You're an elite 3-point shooter. You're an elite mid-range shooter. One of the best mid-range shooters in the league, even if he doesn't take a lot of them. You're crafty around the basket. Sometimes I like Halliburton's got to score more. And game 3 was one of those games. Only 15 shots in the game, when a lot of your teammates in that game, 5 of 25 from 3, Indiana as a whole, only 3 of 17 from 3 non-Halliburton players. If your teammates don't have it going, sometimes like you gotta feel out the moment and know, okay, this is a me game. Like game 4 with Minnesota, OKC, Shea 30 shots, Jalen Williams 24 shots. Sometimes it's gonna be you. Yeah, and Halliburton, I think, needs to learn the same lesson that Jokic once had to learn. Jokic, similar type of player in terms of, I want to pass first, I want to make my teammates better. That's his preference. Jokic learned, okay, I got to dominate. Like that's me being selfless. It's me scoring, not just passing the ball. And Halliburton, I hope if this is a close game down the stretch, Halliburton's already got 18, 19 shots. And the end of the game is what gets him to 20, 21, 22, 23 shots in the game, because whether it's this round against the Knicks to finish them off, or whether it's definitely next round against Oklahoma City, Halliburton's going to have to take 24, 25 shots in a lot of different games, maybe even average that amount of shots per game. And to me, that's the thing Halliburton has to learn. You can pass, but feeling the moment and knowing when you need to be a scorer for your team.
Yeah, well, and he's pretty Jokic-ish as a point guard. He makes things so much easier for his teammates, and they get out in transition, but they don't turn the ball over in transition. And so they're playing really smart, great offense. At the end of games, though, it's like, all right, how many times do you want to go to Pascal Siakam? He wasn't really giving them much down the stretch. Andrew Nembhard was a killer against the Cavs and was a 0 against the Knicks in game 3.
And might not even play game 4. He's a game time decision.
So, and Nesmith had the ankle. So actually, as we talk this out, It's not over by any means, and
No.
the Knicks could absolutely steal another one in Indianapolis. I think with the Knicks, it's more, I just don't trust their starting five. I don't like the way they play offense. They rely too much on Brunson, and Brunson and Cat are getting attacked relentlessly on defense. And so I think over the course of this series, I still trust the Pacers to win it. But the gap between these two teams is not that big. And to go back to the Pacers and the way they're closing games, my concern, the difference between Halliburton and Jokic is big enough. He can get whatever he wants on offense. He can force the issue and get himself good looks. With Halliburton, I worry that the athleticism is a limitation in those moments where he's not able to just pull up for three and get himself like pretty good looks. And I wonder whether that's one of the reasons we see him look more passive when defenses lock in on him. But even so, I hope he forces the issue more than he did over the weekend.
I think that's 100% true. The athleticism limitations for him do pop up with some of those moments. But with that said, again, like we talked about SGA earlier, the usage of the mid-range for him and Jalen Williams in these playoffs. Tyrese Halliburton is 9 of 16 on pull-up twos compared to 22 of 76 on pull-up threes. Like, maybe shift some of those pull-up threes to the mid-range.
The foul line jumper, man, it's underrated in the 2020s. So let's bring back the foul line jumper.
I'm telling you, man, like I said it last season with Halliburton, I'm saying it again now. He does not utilize the pull-up in the mid-range nearly enough. He's 50% basically in his career on pull-up twos. That's a shot teams want to give you. Take it sometimes. Like, just take it.
For the love of God,
you're amazing at it. You're incredible at it. So we'll see if Halliburton does that throughout this series or if he needs to against Oklahoma City next round. There was some news, Andrew.
Oh, boy.
In the NBA. Chris Paul, according to Mark Stein on his Substack, is not expected back with the San Antonio Spurs. Do you have a favorite fit out there in the NBA for retirement home Chris Paul?
Retirement would be my favorite fit for Chris Paul. I loved prime Chris Paul. This is one of the things that's tricky is I mentioned my geriatric millennial roots earlier. Like, all of the guys who I entered the industry with and who were great a decade ago, the money is so big now that guys are just hanging around. And so I worry that like an entire generation, like Gen Alpha, is going to know Chris Paul as the control freak flopper who plays like 25 minutes a game, can't really get his own offense, but he's overpraised by basketball media for reasons that nobody can explain. I can explain them. It's because Chris Paul was amazing 15 years ago. And so I don't want him to just hang around and be this shell of himself.
5 years ago with Phoenix, he was amazing.
Yeah, well, but even that was
really
a diminished
amazing.
Chris Paul.
Yes.
I mean, like, he used to be able to get you 25 a game. I've been like throwing out maybe Tyrese Halliburton is Chris Paul for a new generation. But the reality is Chris Paul was excellent defensively on top of all the Halliburton-ish stuff that he did offensively, and he was athletic enough to get his own shot in crunch time. He was a master of the mid-range for many years there. So I want Gen Alpha to study up on that version of Chris Paul and not watch Chris Paul play 15 minutes a game for the Lakers or someone next year. I don't know. Do you have any home for him, a retirement home?
I mean, it depends. Is Chris Paul willing to come off the bench? Probably not. He continued to want to start for the Spurs last year, even after the Fox acquisition, which made no sense for that roster construction, but it's what happened anyway. So this year, I cannot imagine he would continue to start. Castle just won Rookie of the Year. The Spurs at number 2, unless they trade the pick, are probably going to take Dylan Harper out of Rutgers, another guard. CP3 would be coming off the bench and probably not playing a lot. So with him, I understand him wanting to leave. But if he's willing to start, willing to come off the bench, that would increase the amount of teams I'd like to see him go to. Dallas would be interesting. Kyrie out until later in the season with his torn ACL. he could start to begin the year and high pick and roll with Anthony Davis. Like it could be help Cooper Flag out as a rookie.
Ooh.
I think the Dallas Mavericks, that's not a hard move for him either, from San Antonio to Dallas. That's the number one team.
In Texas.
Yeah, exactly. That's the number one team on my list. Like Lakers with LeBron. I don't know. I mean,
yeah. The Lakers have been thrown out as a potential Chris Paul destination for literally 10 years, and I hope it never happens. His game doesn't really mesh well with what LeBron wants to do offensively. They also have Luka and Austin Reeves, who also need the ball. Lakers completely out. But as we talk it through, and I think back to our conversation about Minnesota at the top of the show and how badly they need a ball handler.
2 old guys, Andrew. Mike Conley and Chris Paul.
Ant is making it work with retirement home Mike Conley. Why not give it a try with Chris Paul? If he's willing to take a role where he's playing like 15 minutes a game, 20 minutes tops, I could see that being a fit that isn't horrible. But I'm sticking with my original plea. Chris Paul, please just retire and go get paid a ton of money to announce games on Amazon or something.
He would be awesome doing that. He might actually get paid close to as much.
That's true. The money's getting good in that area as well.
I know, exactly. So Chris Paul, hopefully, he retires. But we'll see if he ends up in a good situation. New York Post, Brian Lewis reported that the Nets are looking to package Cam Johnson with other picks. They have 5 total picks in this year's draft, all 5 in the top 46. They're trying to package picks or future picks with Cam Johnson to land a second lottery pick. They currently have the 8th pick in the NBA draft. I could see Houston at 10, maybe trading out or down. I could see Portland at 11 doing it, or even Chicago at 12 moving out or down. But the thing is with Brooklyn, there are rumblings they'd like to move up. I wonder if this is what it's all about, that they'd want to trade Cam Johnson and picks to get a second lottery pick to package 8, and that second lottery pick to get to like 2 or 3 or 4 or 5. Like, I wonder if that's actually the final plan for Brooklyn here, is to move up, because one of the teams that got screwed in the lottery, they did not move up, they've only moved down.
Yeah. I mean, they had a really tough beat. They only won 26 games this season, and they were trading guys like a month or 2 months into the season, trying to accelerate the tank. And unfortunately, Jordi Fernandez was just too good of a coach for them. And now here they are picking 8th. I mean, that just really, really sucks. Cam Johnson, if I'm Houston, they got to figure out what they're going to do with Fred VanVleet, right? Like, because he has an option. They have a team option that is now extended beyond the draft. And if they're trading for a star like Giannis, Fred VanVleet has to be part of that deal. And the Bucks are probably going to want to be like getting off money in that contract, in that trade. And so they trade for VanVleet and then waive his, I think he's making like $45 million next year. And so I think Houston is probably going to want more than Cam Johnson if they're taking back that sort of salary. But good luck to Brooklyn. I don't blame them for trying.
Couple other things. Yaxel Lendenborg, who was 50-50 to stay in the NBA draft. Shams Charania reported he's going to Michigan, transferring there. Personally, I think that's a really good decision for him. He did not get like a promise in the late first round as he was looking for. I've heard Drake Powell from North Carolina worked out for the Bulls this week. They have the 12th pick and the 45th pick in the draft. Sounding a lot like Powell is going to move towards that lottery mid-first range, kind of like Carter Bryant from Arizona. Powell seems to be rising through workouts and after his very impressive combined numbers he posted with athletic testing. So Powell worked out for the Bulls, could be moving up, like Carter Bryant, like Cedric Howard, a lot of these versatile, rangy wings. For you, Andrew, you're a Wizards fan. They have the 6th pick and the 18th pick in the 2025 NBA draft. First, I want to ask you, how crushed were you lottery night?
I was really crushed, and I actually thought back to a conversation that I had with you on this podcast near the end of the season. The Wizards, it was game 82, and the Wizards won. And I joked with you, like, at the end of the day, it's good basketball karma. If they slide to 6, such is life. I'll gouge my eyes out, something to that effect. And there I was on lottery. The reason I was joking with you is because it just never crossed my mind that the Wizards could be as crappy as they were all season long and then get screwed the way they did on lottery night. I knew statistically that was a possibility, but in my gut, I thought it was going to work out. And boy, was that a mistake. So we're sitting at 6. I did not really spend much time thinking about the sort of prospects who are going to be available at 6 because I spent the entire season thinking that the Wizards were going to be somewhere in the top 3 and that Ace Bailey versus VJ Edgecombe was my worst case scenario as a Wizards fan, and that debate. Alas, I'm going to have to look a tier or 2 below the top 3 guys.
It's disappointing, man. Cooper's a sure thing to be a good player.
Mm-hmm.
And he's got a chance to be an amazing player for number 1. Dylan Harper, depending on who you ask, some people say he's a can't miss prospect. Others say, well, we'll see. We'll see about Dylan Harper. Ace Bailey, very split on him. But I think, from 3 to 10, it's pretty flat. Like, obviously you'd rather be at 3 than at number 6 because you'd get to choose from more players. But I do think there's a number of guys that are, beauties in the eye of the beholder in this year's draft class, where at number 6, the team might have the guy at number 6 ranked 3 on their board. So is there anybody, as you've assessed options at that 6th pick, that you're like, okay, I really like him for Washington in this spot. I think he could be a steal here.
Well, I need your help. You're the draft expert, and so I have not really put in the time, crunched tape on someone like Trey Johnson. How should I feel about Trey Johnson as a candidate at number 6?
Well, I interviewed Trey Johnson last week.
Oh, okay.
Here on this podcast, if you want to learn about him as a person, very funny, very quick. We had some good back and forths. I like Trey. I was impressed when I kind of pushed him on some of his flaws, the at-rim finishing, talked about the playmaking and things of that nature. And, I think he has an understanding of who he is, what his strengths are, and what he needs to get better at. With Trey Johnson, I think he'd be an excellent pick at number 6 if he makes it there. I worry about the fit next to Jordan Poole. Bub Carrington. I think you might have too much of kind of a similar thing in the backcourt. I'd look to move Jordan Poole immediately if I draft Trey Johnson. I would not want them together. I would not want Trey Johnson learning bad habits from Jordan Poole, even though Poole had some good moments last year. He had his best 3-point shooting season of his career. I think it's too much of the same thing. With Trey Johnson, I think the dude's arguably the best shooter in the class. Con Knipple, you could make a case for him as well. Among some guys like Kobe Brea from Kentucky, 2nd round picks, Peyton Sanford from Iowa, guys like that who can shoot the hell out of it. But as lottery picks, it's Trey Johnson or Con Knipple. The dude is an amazing bucket getter, coming off of screens and off of handoffs.
Yep.
Pull up jumpers. The dude can hit shots from anywhere on the floor with confidence. He's clutch. There's like an it factor about him. If you're banking on a guy to surpass Dylan Harper as like the 2nd best player in the class, to me, Trey Johnson is the guy that I'd bet on him. So I think the upside is significant. I was kind of surprised. I asked him, like, what's your best player comparison, current or historical? And he said, I've always liked the prime Ray Allen comparison. Prime Ray Allen from the Milwaukee days, the Sonics days. And part of it was, because the shooting, but also because Ray Allen at that time was a good downhill attacker.
I was going to say, he could put the ball on the floor at that point.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think Trey Johnson, he said to me, he's like, teams want me to dunk more. And he says, I hope at the combine I did show I'm a better athlete than people think I am. So, he didn't get to the rim a lot at Texas, and he wasn't that good at finishing at the rim, only 46% on half-court layup attempts. But I like him. I like him a lot. I think he's got like a stars mentality. Like you put that against Con Knippel.
Love to hear a stars mentality. Let's do it.
Yeah, like Con, I asked him, what's your best comparison? He's like, I'd love to play like Klay Thompson. Like he's embracing the backseat role, the co-star role, right? For the Wizards, I don't want to draft Con Knippel. I want the star. I want to swing. So
do
Trey
you
Johnson,
think will Knippel be available at 6?
Good question. I if I'm Philly, I think about him at 3.
Yeah.
Like at Philly, do you want the Ace Bailey, mystery box, or do you want Con Knippel, the sure thing, high end role player? Like, what do you want if you're Philly at 3? And then at Charlotte, I think really likes VJ Edgecombe at 4. I'd be a little bit surprised if Charlotte doesn't take Edgecombe at number 4 based off of what I'm hearing. Utah at 5. Then again, like Edgecombe, maybe he goes 3. Who knows? It's always possible. But Utah at 5, similar. Obviously they got screwed like you guys did on lottery night. And if I'm them, I'm swinging. I'm not taking Knippel. So who knows? Maybe Knippel ends up there for you at 6. Do you like him for the Wizards?
I love Knippel. I got to be honest. You're selling me on Trey Johnson. I like the upside. I like that he's aware of his shortcomings, and I love that he's enough of a hoops head to comp himself to Bucks Ray Allen. That's great work from the next generation there. So all of that has me intrigued by Trey Johnson. I think sitting at 6 as a Wizards fan, I am resigned to the idea that they're not going to find a number 1 guy and a franchise player. And I would say that where you make mistakes is by trying to will that into existence at number 6. And so rather than try to make Trey Johnson, Jeremiah Fears, Ace Bailey into the cornerstone that you've been tanking for the past couple of years, you just bide your time and take Con Knippel, knowing that he's going to be really good and projects as somebody who can definitely be part of a playoff nucleus once it's time to eventually make the playoffs sometime in my lifetime. And I would opt for that sort of safe, patient approach and another very aggressive tank next season when there are like 3 or 4 other guys who are potential franchise cornerstones. But if they end up with Trey Johnson, I would be fine with that. How do you feel about Jeremiah Fears? Another question on the way out here.
I like Fears a lot. I think Fears, obviously, he's on the smaller side. A little over 6 foot, but ultimately with him, man, bucket getter, hit a ton of clutch shots this year at Oklahoma. The shot creation, he can get anywhere he wants to on the floor. With him, he did not shoot threes at a great level as a freshman, but ultimately I'm banking on his shot. He's got an elite floater, 50% on floaters, 85% from the free throw line. Great mid-range shooter, 44% on mid-range jumpers. And so with him, it's like just extending the range to 3. There's no guarantee of it as a smaller guy. He only shot 18.6% on dribble jumper threes, but the mid-range touch, the floater touch, the free throw line touch, he was pretty good on catch and shoot threes as well. That's 36%. I think that number will easily go up. Over time, I think Fears is one of those potential engines of a team over the long term. And I like his playmaking as well. So Fears would be a good fit as well. The issue with Washington is like Bob Carrington, Keyshawn George, and Jordan Poole. How much of buy-in is there with there? Like, are you worried about position? Are you worried about fit? Do you believe in those guys as the long-term guards of the future? Or are you saying, screw it, they're not? Let's take somebody else who actually could be.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the reasons Knippel is appealing to me is he slides in as a wing who can fit with just about anybody.
Sure.
Whereas if you're taking someone like Fears, you want the ball in his hands, and they have Bub Carrington, who was pretty good throughout the season and particularly in the second half. So I would guess that the Wizards won't draft another Bub Carrington type player unless he's like a guaranteed franchise changing guy available in next year's draft.
trading up, maybe like that possibility if they went from 6 to 2, Dylan Harper, something like that. But ultimately, maybe a next year type of thing. Because next year is way more loaded. It's 6 and 18. Would you be happy if Derek Queen were the pick from Maryland? Keep him home.
Well, this is the thing, KOC. I arrive at draft season. I used to be like a dyed-in-the-wool draft guy, would follow it all year and have fully formed takes by the time we got to April and May. Now I podcast about technology and U.S.-China affairs, and I've got all sorts of other stuff that I'm dealing with. And
Sharp Tech, Sharp China under the Stratechery platform.
That's right. That's
Ben
right.
Thompson's
Good plug from you.
Unbelievable blog and podcast network where you can also find your pod with Ben Golliver. Go.
You can subscribe at my Twitter at Andrew Sharp. There's a link there. And so I'm trying to keep up with a bunch of different worlds, and I don't really have time to watch college basketball all season. So I arrive at the draft, and I watched Dylan Harper, Ace Bailey, and Cooper Flagg. Those were the three guys I chose to watch this year. Not impressed with Ace Bailey, let me tell you that much. Cooper, terrific. I wish him nothing but the best down there in Dallas. So I look at like Derek Queen. He's a local guy, a good story. But for the life of me, I can't understand why he's projected to go lottery. He doesn't seem very athletic. He doesn't seem like he can shoot. He doesn't seem like he fits with what the big man position has turned into in the modern era. And yet for months now, he's been projected as like a surefire lottery pick. For a while, there were people floating him in the top 10. I don't think he's being projected to go like 6 to the Wizards, but I saw some Wizards fans wanted to draft him. I don't get it. Can you help fill in some of the blanks here?
It's the Şengün Sabonis construct with Derek Queen as a skilled big who can attack the rim. It's the Naz Reid style drives to the rim. The game winner he had in the Sweet 16 where he tacks from the perimeter and hits that leaning jumper. It's the skill you're betting on with him as a passer and scorer from the big man position that makes him appealing. But ultimately, I share some of the concerns with you. What level can he reach defensively? He is a poor athlete. I think he's a worse athlete than Şengün, who won an MVP in the Turkish league when he was just a teenager.
Yeah.
Şengün was an awesome player overseas before the NBA. Sabonis was a better college player at Gonzaga than Derek Queen was at Maryland. So with Queen, I think, it's kind of like the Jokic, Charizard, the Charizard versus Charmander type of meme you see with Sabonis and Şengün and Jokic. Queen, is he somewhere in the middle? Or is he like a lower end Şengün? That's
what is
the big
Charizard?
question.
Is that? Did you just drop a Pokemon reference on me?
Pokemon reference, yes.
There you go.
Exactly. It's like the evolved version of Charmander.
This is the difference between the younger millennial generation and the older millennial generation. I mean, yeah, I wish him nothing but the best. I think his story is cool. His season at Maryland was great. But if you're throwing out Şengün comps, I worry about building around Şengün, which sounds like the best possible outcome for Derek Queen, and also doesn't sound like a particularly realistic timeline for Derek Queen. So again, I hope he succeeds, but I hope he doesn't end up in Washington, D.C. I think it's my takeaway.
Too much pressure for him in Washington. I'd prefer to see him fall into the late lottery to like an ideal spot. And Andrew, up next in this podcast is Derek Queen. So we recorded your segment. Derek Queen is coming up next.
He seems like a good guy.
He's a great kid. He's a great. It's like the late night talk shows when Derek Queen comes walking
through it
out.
all, and I'm like, well, red flag, red flag, red flag. The hitch in his jumper are also pretty concerning to me. But a perfect
Derek Queen comes and sits next to you on the couch.
Derek Queen,
what'd you say about me?
Wrong. Prove me wrong.
Derek Queen's up next. Andrew Sharp, thanks for joining me.
Thanks, man.
Thanks again to Andrew Sharp for joining me. Now go watch my interview with Derek Queen at the link in the description below. Have a good day.